Mayor, I hereby declare that I have determined that an in-person meeting is neither practical nor prudent on account of Governor Pritzker's disaster declaration because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Point of order.
Roll call, please.
Mayor, point of order, please. How come we're declaring a disaster declaration when the restaurants are open at full capacity? I don't understand. We can't have a public meeting, but we can go out to eat.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Grasso, point of order.
I've made my declaration, Zach. Roll call, please.
It doesn't make sense, though.
Mayor Grasso,
Here.
Trustee Francis,
Here.
Trustee Chiappa,
Here.
Trustee Paveza,
Here.
Trustee Snyder,
Here.
Trustee Matal,
Here.
Trustee Model.
Here.
Okay, that takes us to item 3, presentations and public hearings. Tonight we're having the 2020 annual crime report. Chief Madden.
Thank you. Tonight, I was requested by Mayor Grasso to give an update on 2020 crime statistics.
I requested
So we'll
it
give
too,
you
Chief. Thank you.
a presentation.
Thank you, Chief.
And a lot more detail will be presented when we publish our annual report in March. Advance it, please. So in summary, the statistics I'm going to present tonight are from 2015 to 2020. And what I'm going to present to you is overall violent crime and overall property crime, which I'm pleased to you the numbers are low. There's been a 3-year decrease in property crimes, and violent crimes remain in single-digit numbers. Next slide, please. Just a little background, so define property crime. By our uniform crime reports, property crime is defined as burglary, arson, theft, and motor vehicle theft. For the period of 2015 to 2020, I don't have a slide because we only had 1 arson reported in the village of Burr Ridge. For the remaining property crimes, data shows an overall decline in incidents from 2018 to 2020. Next slide, please. This slide gives you an overall of property crimes. And you can see in 2018, we had the highest at 182 incidents. So property crimes involve theft, and we look back at 2018 to find out, what exactly was the issue in 2018. We had a spike in identity theft cases reported. So those cover all types of scams and frauds that are reported. We take reports on. 2019, we're down to 160, and in 2020, down to 118. This gives you a little breakout of property crimes. You can see the numbers of 2020 burglaries. This covers residential and commercial are at 11 incidents. Theft for 2020 is at 96, and motor vehicle theft is at 11 incidents. Next. Violent crime is defined as aggravated battery, robbery, rape, and murder. For the period of 2015 to 2020, we did not experience a murder. For the remaining violent crimes, overall incidents continue to be very low in single digits. Next slide, please. That gives you an overall look at a chart from 2015 to 2020 for violent crimes. It's all violent crime. In 2020, there were 6 incidents. Next, please. This is a breakdown, leaving out the murder statistic because it's at 0. And you can see a breakout of violent crime. Robberies, it's hard to see, it's a small number there, but in 2020, we had 3. In 2020, there were 2 incidents of armed robbery at the Shell, located at Route 83 in Central, both cleared by arrest. And then we had another incident of robbery that occurred in one of the parks in our town, which was an internet transaction that they attempted to steal, or they did steal the items from the lady that wanted to sell it. She met these individuals at the park. She was pushed down and they took her property. In 2019, back to robbery, again, we had 2 incidents and both were cleared by arrest. As you can see, in all all categories of violent crime, single digits, it's very low. Next slide, please. So one of the crime prevention investigative tools, initiatives that we presented in 2020, actually at the end of 2020, was our proposal to integrate the flock safety wing integration into our subdivision cameras. As we presented at the end of 2020 at a board meeting in December, we've got 82 cameras that are in our HOA subdivision partnership. They are deployed in 16 different subdivisions. We selected 42 of those cameras to integrate into this new technology. Someone had made a comment that this should have been introduced earlier in the year, or earlier in years. This is brand new technology. It was just introduced to us in November of 2020, and it was officially rolled out in December of 2020. We're actually going to be the first municipality in Illinois to be deploying the wing integration. And once again, that integration program is interfacing flock safety license plate recognition technology, interfacing that with 42 of the cameras that are operating in our 16 subdivisions. So it's an outstanding program. Also, what we're proposing in the 21-22 budget is to introduce approximately 20 fixed LPR cameras, village-owned in different parts of the village. So we'd like to expand out license plate recognition and reading technology. I feel it's extremely important to address the threats that are external to the village, that are coming in our village. When we talk about burglaries, I've got an intelligence report in my folder here. It's 65 pages of data listing suspect vehicles and burglary cases that are primarily European travelers, formerly known as gypsies, and they perform and conduct these ruse burglaries, take advantage of residents and gain access to their house and steal their items. This is a threat that's happening in Illinois, mostly in northern Illinois, and our detectives are working with many different jurisdictions, including the city of Chicago, to identify these individuals and develop cases to bring charges. Next, please. Mayor Grasso wanted me to touch on body-worn cameras. As you know, House Bill 3653 was passed in the lame duck session. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. And one item in the bill was a mandatory implementation for all police departments in Illinois, all law enforcement, to wear body-worn cameras. This is nothing new to the village of Burr Ridge. I proposed this in past years. Unfortunately, it's a significant expense. And for financial reasons, we deferred it a few times. And the expense isn't with the hardware, the camera itself. The expense is in the data collection and storage. As you can guess, high definition video takes up a lot of storage, and that's where a lot of the costs come in. But right now, we're going to propose, and it's in my budget goals, to presenting Axon is the company, Axon body-worn cameras, and Axon Fleet. What Fleet is, we've had mobile video recorders in the cars for probably about 20 years now. It's an outstanding tool to have in the vehicles. Axon integrates the body cameras with the Fleet cameras in the vehicles. We are in need to replace the cameras in the cars. We've held off because my goal was to introduce this technology and have it work together. Axon is a unique company, and it's a sole source in that the Fleet cameras in the cars act like license plate recognition cameras. So those two cars that we currently have deployed license plate recognition technology for the past 5 years, we're going to be disconnecting that. There's going to be a savings there that can be applied to the cost of the cameras. So these, instead of just having two cars out there with license plate recognition technology, we'll have every patrol vehicle in the fleet equipped with their mobile camera. It's my hopes that the technology advances, and I find it hard to believe that it wouldn't advance to the point where license plate recognition technology ends up in the body cameras themselves, along with the fleet. So the technology has advanced along with redaction in the videos, which was always a concern to chiefs and my colleagues, in that the time it takes to redact video to provide FOIA videos on FOIA requests and video to the state's attorney's office would be a significant amount of time. The technology is advanced to the point where they significantly reduce the amount of time, up to 90%, approximately 90% of the time that it would take to process those videos. It is now done automatically in the software. So also to answer and protect the officers with the mandates in House Bill 3653 is the technology that Axon, of course, provides us with our TASER devices. We currently have 6 TASER devices that the officers use. When a TASER device is turned on, the body camera turns on automatically. If the officer draws his weapon from his holster, the body camera turns on automatically. If an officer backs up another officer, gets in within about 30 feet, all the other backup officers' cameras automatically turn on. So there's a significant amount of technology in this equipment. And what's important to have those cameras turn on at the time a TASER is activated or if the weapon is drawn from the holster is because in House Bill 3653, which will become law July 1st, it's a class 3 felony if the officer doesn't turn on his body camera, which is one of the many points that chiefs have problems with in this bill. So it's giving the officer every benefit of the doubt and giving them the technology to successfully deploy it is extremely important. So there's a couple grants that will be available. One is through IRMA, Intergovernmental Risk Management Association. They're going to present a grant of 33% reimbursement up to $10,000 annually. So they're basically paying for a third of the cost of the body cameras if the agency deploys it. The size agency we are, it's mandatory by 2025. Also, the state of Illinois is it's part of the law in the House bill that the state of Illinois is going to also provide grant funding. I don't know how much they're going to provide. Next. So I wanted to take a chance to talk about, along with the crime stats, something that's going to have a significant effect on all of us as residents of Illinois and us as police officers, and that's House Bill 3653, Amendment 2, which is titled the Criminal Justice Reform Bill. Been working with the Illinois Chiefs legislative team on this bill. We've been having meetings constantly with the proponents and presenters of the bill and try to get language clarified in what is proposed. This bill was over 700 pages. It is over 700 pages. And I'll be honest with you, I still don't know everything that's in it. It's extremely large. It was presented at approximately 4 o'clock in the morning on the last day of the lame duck session. And they had enough votes to pass it. Some priority concerns in this bill is the use of force language is drastically changed. And I'll be frank with you, it's confusing. I've read it multiple times. The language, the definitions in there are vague. We are requesting trailer bills to clean up the language and to actually define the words that they're using in the bill of when an officer could use force. We've got to understand it so we could provide training and education to our officers. It's July 1st is when it becomes law. Excuse me. The bill is on the governor's desk. We have no doubt that he's going to sign it. And so we're going to continue working with the legislators and the proponents that passed this to clean up a lot of the language. Next is body camera language. I talked earlier about it being a class 3 felony if an officer doesn't turn on the body camera. We believe we understand their intent. And as police chiefs, there are things in the bill that we agree with. There are things that are items that were presented as reforms that we agree with. However, unfortunately, we're just in a bind with the language, and a lot of this is really troublesome for police officers and citizens in Illinois. But along with this body language, a class 3 felony for failure to activate a body camera is not allowing an officer in a use of force situation to review his body camera video as he prepares his written report. That's troublesome right there. When high stress incidents occur, the body goes through many different physiological things happen, tunnel vision, auditory changes, and they occur quickly, sometimes within seconds. And not allowing an officer to review the body camera video to prepare a written report is extremely problematic. Police what's also troubling, a couple more items that I want to get into a little more in detail, and actually give you a little examples of how it will affect us here in Burr Ridge, is in the law on July 1st, police officers cannot take a person into custody for a Class B misdemeanor or a Class C misdemeanor. So what does that mean? A criminal trespass to property is a Class B misdemeanor. And I'll go a little deeper in the next slide. Another issue that we're concerned with is bail elimination. We agree that there are some offenses that a person should not be held in jail until he has his opportunity for trial. We are innocent until proven guilty. However, there are some individuals, and I'm going to give you an example of how one affected us here in Burr Ridge in a December case, where these individuals need to be in jail. They should not be released on a recognizance bond, on a promise to appear in court. Next slide, please. So basically, back to the Class B and Class C misdemeanor. On page 326 of the bill, page 326 of the bill, it mandates that law enforcement shall issue a citation in lieu of a custodial arrest upon proper identification of the individual. For those accused of traffic offenses, Class B, Class C misdemeanor offenses who pose no threat to the community or any person. So basically, to break it down and give you an example, in 2020, Burr Ridge police officers responded to 16 calls of criminal trespass to either residents or commercial properties. Criminal trespass is a Class B misdemeanor. The only thing that's a Class A misdemeanor in the criminal trespass statute is section A4, and that's if you trespass on a farmer's land where there is crop or livestock. That's a Class A misdemeanor. Everything else is a Class B misdemeanor. So what does that mean? Next slide, please. So basically, if you have an individual on your property and you ask that person to leave, he doesn't have to leave. He could stay there. He should leave, but we can do nothing to take that person away. We can give the individual a ticket. We could request that he leaves. If he refuses to leave and it's not being threatening to the property owner, doesn't threat or doesn't verbally issue a threat of violence to the property owner, there's nothing we could do. That's the truth. That is solid truth. We ask him to leave, he could say, I'm not leaving. As long as he's not threatening you as a property owner, there's nothing we could do. July 1st, that starts. We get calls on solicitors. If somebody has a no soliciting sign, these individuals come up. We have a solicitor ordinance. I was talking to the state's attorney in DuPage County today. The person could be ringing your doorbell, just refuse to leave. As long as he's not threatening you, we can come, we can issue a citation, but we cannot make that person leave. We cannot make that person leave. on your property, backyard, wherever. As long as he's not being threatening, it's criminal trespass to property. That's a Class B misdemeanor. We get calls from businesses with former employees. We get calls from retail establishments for various reasons. There's nothing we can do. We cannot make these people leave. We cannot physically take them into custody when they refuse to leave, like we could do right now. As of July 1st, we could do nothing. Now, that's an example. That is the hard truth, and that's something that we experience here in town. Now, this one's a little more alarming. This example is of course, it's the abolishment of the monetary bail, release on their own recognizance. Back over the last 4 years in Cook County, they've already been engaging in different reforms. We've seen it's challenges in charging suspects. We've seen bail reduced drastically. But we had an incident in town where this is a prime example. On August 31st, and I'm not using the individual's name, if you can go back. On August 31st, in a suburb of Cook County, I call him Person A, was arrested for aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. That's a felony. The person did not have a FOID card, and they're not going to have a concealed carry card. You're not going to get one without a FOID. This individual had a loaded Uzi. You know what an Uzi is? It's an Israeli carbine with a 50-round drum magazine, loaded with 50 rounds in the front of his car by the driver's area. He was arrested and released on $300 bond. His bond was set at $3,000. You post 10%, $300. So on December 13, this individual was in Burr Ridge at the Crown Plaza where we had a shooting incident. He's one of 4 suspects that we are currently investigating for the shooting. I'm not saying he was the shooter, but he was with the shooter. He was in our town on December 13th. He was released on $300 bond with a loaded Uzi with a 50-round drum. Now that's their bond and bail reforms that they've instituted over the last 4 years in Cook County. After July 1st, there's going to be no bond, no cash bond. No cash bond. Now, the proponents of the bill will say that, well, it's up to the judge. If the judge determined that there's a danger to the community, a danger to the citizens, that they can be held for trial in jail. Well, I'm a little puzzled here. This is before the law is enacted in July, and you've got this individual who gets out with $300, promises to come to court, posts a small cash bond, but he ends up in our town. And I'm sure you've all heard the incident that happened over the weekend in Bloomingdale at their hotel. It's pretty disturbing. It has an impact on all of us, and I'm speaking as a citizen in Illinois. The carjackings that have occurred in Illinois, it's occurred all over northern Illinois, all over. What are the consequences? And that's why we see so many carjackings happening. You see a ton of them in the city. It's alarming, it's very alarming as law enforcement. So, like I said, this bill, I'm sure the governor's going to sign it, becomes law in July. There are different laws in it. Again, it's 700, and I think it's about 750 pages that we are still trying to, we had a meeting today, and we are still trying to figure out everything that's in there. But we're working hard to address a lot of these issues that are problematic and have a significant impact on all of us in Illinois. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. We're going to start with the trustees. Do any of the trustees have any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Chief, thank you for the presentation. I don't know why, I didn't see it in the board packet, so I didn't have a chance to review some of the numbers and stuff. I kind of want to go over those in detail. I might have some more questions for you because some of your numbers didn't jive with some of my numbers that I've seen, but we'll get that sorted out. First, I wanted to read a comment from a resident. A resident sent me an email, and asked me to bring this up in tonight's crime report for you.
Who's the resident?
I'm sorry?
Who is the resident?
I don't think the resident's important. Let me read the email, and I think that's what's important to you.
Who is the resident? If he or she asked you to read something, please identify the resident.
Well, you know, I don't think it really matters exactly who the resident is, Gary. It
Yeah,
does.
well, It
But
may
listen,
actually matter.
it might as well be, you know, it doesn't really matter, but
May not
a lot
even
of
be the
residents-
resident.
why
may not-
exactly was the resident wants to know, why exactly was the threat of an armed man in our community not sent out over Nixle? You know, we had this, they're referring to the Savoy Club issue. I know you know about this, Chief. And they felt, this resident feels that it would have been, you know, in terms of all of this and safety, you know, getting prompt information out to people is important. Why didn't that go out via Nixle? Because the resident did some research and they were told by Mr. Walter that there's 6,024 Nixle subscribers, many of them receiving messages by text, and the information only went out in the village e-briefs, and that only is about 2,000 subscribers. So in terms of getting information out, and importantly, like shooters, like these types of things, why didn't that go out in Nixle? Because it happened on December 4th, and it didn't go out in the e-briefs till a week later on the 11th in a less effective method. Do you have any idea?
Well, first of all,
Chief, before you answer, I'd like to know who the resident is. When they ask, if he doesn't answer the question, it's all spot.
Chief, I don't know that he has any more authority than I do. I'm a trustee. I asked you a question on behalf of a resident. I don't need to identify the resident so Mayor Grasso can threaten and intimidate and harass them more. That's what he does. He's very vindictive. So I think it's okay to keep them anonymous. You know what, Chief? Excuse me.
That is a usual Zach model misstatement of fact.
Answer the question, Chief.
Yes, so let's assume it's not a resident because
It doesn't really matter. How about I'm asking the question, Gary? Let's say I'm asking the question. I'll take the blame.
not the
Chief, I'd
important-
like to know the answer as a trustee.
what is the important part of this, with all of Zach Model's grandstanding, is, Chief, please give him an answer. There was an incident, we all discussed it, where there was someone that was in Burr Ridge, apparently tried to make a break-in. We
I
investigated.
didn't ask you, Mayor. I asked the chief. He's in charge of this. He does a fine job. I think he can answer a question.
Right, and so this little background here, and
Does the chief control the Nixle system or do you, Mayor?
And so what happened was there was an incident. It was fully investigated. We talked to the resident, who actually is a resident of the village, who was very satisfied with what happened. But Chief, please answer the question.
you know, the incident you're talking about, the incident was significantly delayed when it was reported to us. Approximately 5 hours of a delay. I'm not sure whether they received the video
Okay.
of it. It was my direction that rather than use Nixle, I wanted our officers who are homeowners association liaison officers to talk to all of the HOA presidents and personally make sure that this information gets to them. I didn't want to rely on Nixle. I disagree that there's 6,000. I think that's a misunderstanding. If you're a subscriber and you give your email and your phone, that's counted as twice. So maybe there could be 3,000,
Okay.
still a significant number.
Right.
But I thought that this incident was disturbing, alarming. It was worse than the ruse burglaries we had. I didn't want to rely on an email. I didn't want to rely on text messages. I wanted these officers to make contact. I instructed that a full color document be produced with the individual's pictures on it, because I was not aware that we can do that on Nixle. I wanted everybody to see this individual with this handgun with an extended magazine on it.
Yep.
I wanted to get that information out. I wanted to be confident that it was relayed. So that's what we did. And then we also used Nixle to push out general crime prevention again, like I've done many, many, many times. Motor vehicle thefts.
Yep.
Individuals leaving their fobs in their cars.
Yep.
For the last 2 years, I've been putting it out on Nixle.
I'm appreciative of what you've been putting on Nick.
So maybe you can see what my intent was. My intent was to make sure, what could we do to get that information to people who maybe they don't subscribe to Nixle? We have a lot of people that
We
don't.
do, but we also have many that are not in a homeowners association. also.
Let him finish his.
Future, chief, maybe just in the future.
Zach, let him finish his answer.
Thank you.
Specifically in those instructions is please contact your neighbors, friends, and what I was hoping was disseminating this information exponentially to the amount of people. Okay, we have a lot of people on Nixle that don't live in Burr Ridge. It goes by zip code. Now you know the zip code issue. Okay, so we have media on Nixle, which is good because we also crafted that document and sent it to the media too.
Okay.
Because I wanted this information out. I was extremely concerned about this incident. I talked to the homeowner, the victim, on Monday morning.
Yes.
And you can ask anybody in that subdivision. The officers were in there constantly for a long period of time. They did that on their own.
Good to hear, Chief. No, I'm not criticizing. I think that we should just use all of the methods possible, maybe in the future. It just seemed like there was a delay and that it went out in maybe not the most effective
Like I
method.
said, there was a delay in reporting, which is delay in getting the
Yep,
investigation.
getting the information. Well, I liked the mail. I got it through my HOA. It's an informal HOA, so thank you,
But I
but
also want to say why it was delayed. It wasn't any fault of the resident. The
okay.
resident didn't know.
Yep.
The resident didn't know. It was until after the fact that the resident said, let me check the camera.
Right. And
then
saw it on
saw
the
it.
camera. Right. No, I get it. I heard about it on the 4th. It was floating around on Nextdoor somehow. On the 4th, people were putting it out through Arrowhead Farms is where I saw it. And so
Beautiful. And that's exactly what I wanted.
I would love to see it on all the platforms in the future, all of them. That's my only suggestion. So thank you for hearing me out and for kindly answering my question despite whatever else was going on. And regardless with the other stuff, I too am troubled by the crime bill. And as I emailed you before it passed, I think there is opportunity for reform, but I'm not sure these were the right way to do it. And I'd love to work with you, and support you because some of the things you reported are pretty troubling, I think, for all of us. So anyway, thank you for the report.
Are there any other questions by any of the other trustees before we go to any of the residents?
Trustee Franzese, a few comments, please.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to thank the chief, deputy chief, all the sergeants, lieutenants, detectives, policemen, women, the officers that serve our village. You're doing a fantastic job protecting our citizens.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We see crime rates going up in the city of Chicago. Murder is up 50% over last year. Carjacking is up 100%. And our crime statistics are either the same or they're going down. And that's a tremendous report from our chief. And I want to thank our fine police force for helping us remain safe. House Bill 3653 is troublesome. It handcuffs our policemen tremendously. And we need to do what we can do to fight that so that reforms don't go into place and that our police can continue to serve and protect us. The body-worn cameras, it's great technology, and I also applaud the Flock license plate recognition software. When you found out about it in November, it was on our desks in December to approve, and I appreciate the speed in which you went after that system and then brought it to our attention, gave us the necessary information, and allowed us to approve it. Thank you.
This is Trustee Mittal. I want to commend the police department, chief, and all the staff on the fine work they do, being very proactive to adapt to new technology, taking advantage of grants from IRMA to subsidize the expenses. I have to say the crime situation in Burr Ridge is much better than other towns and cities surrounding us. I read the local paper doings and patch, and really what's reported is someone's locker in Lifetime was broken into, or someone got a scam call. So, if that is the state of crime in Burr Ridge, I think that's thanks to the police department's fine job. So once again, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This is Trustee Schiappa. I want to thank Chief Madden and Deputy Chief Loftus for running a a great department, a CALIA certified department. My office, my work office closed, so now I'm working from home. And so I'm out and about in the streets a lot more often these days. And every time I'm out, I see a police officer driving along and patrolling and continuing our safety for the village. And I still have residents that come to me and commend the police department on how safe they feel living here in the village of Burr Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, is there, Evan, is there anybody indicating they wish to speak on this item that is called in, or YouTube or whatever the other venues are? If someone wants to comment or ask a question, you need to unmute, identify yourself, and then you can ask your questions or make your comments. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to make a comment or ask a question?
Yes, one person in the audience in the boardroom has indicated they'd like to speak.
Okay, would he or she please come up to the podium, identify themselves, and they have the floor.
Good evening, Russell Smith. I'm at 8094 South Garfield. I heard the presentation. I've been a homeowner now for over 14 years. And, you know, after last year having COVID, having the social unrest and everything else that the department has to deal with, I love seeing the numbers that you showed tonight. I feel very safe in this town, like the rest of us residents. And I just applaud everything you folks have done, as well as the department, the men and women in the department. So hats off to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else, Evan, either calling in? If someone's calling in, they need to unmute. Is there anyone in the audience, anyone else that wishes to speak on this topic?
I believe we are through. Thank you.
I have a comment, Chief. First of all, like everyone else, we are lucky to have you and your fine police department. Repeatedly, you are a CALIA certified organization and department and meet those very high standards. I'm thrilled that you recognize the opportunity on the flock camera contracts to increase the safety within the village. There is no doubt in my mind as the mayor that increased use of cameras in the public areas on the public streets will better protect our residents. Quick examination and detection of illegal cars, stolen cars, people that look suspicious, whatever these cameras can bring to bear to keep us safe. I am all for it. I believe you hear that all the trustees are for it. So I commend you on bringing that forward when you did, as Trustee Francis said, very rapidly last month. The cloud, I want to talk to and tell everybody that the DuPage mayors and managers, I am on the board of directors at our last meeting, which was last Thursday. One of the topics discussed was the crime bill, how unhappy all the mayors were generally in not being included. No one's unhappy about having criminal justice reform. Certainly, some places it's very warranted, but there is some troubling aspects of this bond program and some of the other things that can be addressed in trailer bills, and hopefully they will be prior to July 1st. But one of the things that we discussed at the Board of Directors meeting was the cost of, as you pointed out, Chief, the expense in maintaining and collecting the data. So DuPage Mayors and Managers Board will be exploring a communal type of purchasing power, if you will, so that we can come up with something that might be palatable for all the villages, where we can store the information in one place economically for all of us. There are 35 or so communities in DuPage County. And keep it, of course, separate and get advice from all the lawyers on how to make sure we have the chain of custody. but everybody recognizes that while there is not a big expense for the cameras themselves, the continuing and annual expense of storing and keeping the data is something that all villages want to address and see if we can do that cost effectively. And finally, Chief, I want you to to emphasize the difference between the reality and the perception of DuPage County law enforcement and maybe what is the perception in Cook County law enforcement. Chief, please tell them about the incident where Burr Ridge Police apprehended a criminal, and while he was being restrained and cuffed, the question he asked about the county.
Yeah, that was burglars that were fleeing northbound on I-55, and they were being pursued by a few jurisdictions, and the offending vehicle crashed. He crashed on the DuPage County side and fled into the Babson subdivision. It fled north from I-55. Our officers apprehended two of the individuals. While the one individual was on the ground being handcuffed, he wanted to know what county he was in. He wanted to make sure that he was still in Cook County. He was extremely unhappy when he found out he was in DuPage County. So that's the word on the street. That's the knowledge that's out there, and that's, in my opinion, that's having a big effect on what we're seeing.
You know, that is a tale that means that information is being perceived by the very perpetrators of crime. And I think actually you did a little disservice to the officer, the Burr Ridge officer. When the question was asked, what county am I in? The officer responded, the wrong one.
Yeah, there was some other language, I think.
Well, we're in a public meeting now, but the point is that we straddle Cook and DuPage County. We have the great fortune of being close to the city of Chicago for all of its benefits, but we also, unfortunately, are close to a high crime area. That's what cities are. New York, all the major cities have their crime problems. Those overflow into the suburban areas. Burr Ridge is not immune to that, but we have an excellent police department that has been dealing with it. And you saw the statistics. And so I think the residents would be very happy and safe going to sleep tonight. So thank you again, Chief, for doing this. And we'll do it again a year from now.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us to the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so request, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda, discussed by the board, opened for public comment, and voted upon during this meeting. 5 minutes A, approval of regular board meeting of January 25, 2021. B, approval of Pathway Commission of January 26, 2021. We have no ordinances tonight, no resolutions. That takes us to considerations. We have nothing on the consent agenda there. And so we move
Mayor, we
down.
have C. Mayor, we have 8C, the vendor list.
Thank you, 8D, I'm sorry, the vendor list. I was looking further down my sheet to tell you the truth. 8D, approval of the vendor list dated February 8, 2021 in the amount of $232,155.37 for all funds, plus $180,395.39 for the pay period ending January 23rd, 2021 for a grand total of $412,550.76, which includes special expenditures of $28,434.88 to Schroeder Asphalt Services for the 2020 road program and $32,434.92 to Compass Minerals America for bulk rock salt. Can I get a motion to approve the following items on the consent agenda? 5A and B and 8D.
So moved.
That was Matal. Do we have a second?
Second, Skiappa.
Yapa. Any comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Matal,
Yes.
trustee Skiappa,
Yes.
trustee Pavesa,
Yes.
trustee Snyder,
Yes.
trustee Matal. Model, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Trustee Franzese,
Yes.
motion passes 5-0. 6-0.
6-0? 6-0?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, as I said before, no ordinances, no resolutions. That takes us to 8, consideration. B, well, A, consideration of award, consideration to award a professional services contract for Village Hall inspectional services to Leggett Architects of Oak Brook, Illinois, in the amount of $16,000. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, this is a consideration to award a contract for Village Hall inspectional services. Village Hall is currently a 35-year-old building, has not received a top to bottom inspection in quite some time, over 10 years to our knowledge. There are a number of high ticket items that we anticipate coming down the lane in the next 2 to 3 years to the Village of Fir Ridge's facilities needs related to the Village Hall. And because we have not done a top to bottom inspection of Village Hall in quite some time, I thought it prudent to seek bids for an architect to come in and do a complete facilities assessment on the Village Hall. This again include the complete exterior areas, the roof, any of the HVAC we've got, any of the foundation they want to look at. Really, again, it really is a complete inspection of the building. The lowest responsive bidder was Leggett Architects, $16,000.
Yes.
I should note, Leggett is currently engaged with the village on another project. They are currently doing our facilities assessment for public works facilities needs. And so I thought it'd be fortunate that they be also the low bidder in this particular case. We anticipate that a final report will be returned to the contractor in 8 to 12 weeks, at which time we'll begin to put together a facilities plan for the near future, 5 to 10 years for Village Hall, so we can plan accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of Evan?
This is Trustee Skiappa.
Yes.
Just a couple of questions, Evan. Thank you for doing this. So we've never done a thorough inspection like this.
We've done
Yes, it's never been commissioned.
inspections on the elements of the building. For instance, we had found that we had done a roof inspection some years ago before we put on a new roof, trying to understand where the nature of the work was. When we put in a new chiller in the building, we did an HVAC inspection. So we've done spot inspections on things that require investment in the near term, but we have not done a comprehensive inspection in quite some time. I would anticipate maybe never, just because the building was much newer years ago and there may not have been as great of a need. But considering this building was built in the mid-'80s, I want to make sure that we keep the building in good shape so it can serve us over the long term.
Okay.
Okay.
And Ed, one other
actually-
question.
I'm sorry, let me answer that question a little bit more thoroughly for
Okay.
you and the public. It's the perspective of having been there before. So as many of you know, 2010, we dedicated a new police department. Well, the lead up to that was in 2000, I believe, 8, when we commissioned a very similar study, well, actually a much more thorough study. The board then wanted to determine not only, it was actually what we should do with the building that you're sitting in right now. Remember, that was also the police department until 2010. That building had been constructed in the 1980s. While that wasn't ancient history, there were lots of deficiencies noted in that building. Under this, so there is a very extensive report of the building, probably in the area of 12 years old. As a result of that study, however, it was determined by the board to build a separate freestanding police department and in effect create a campus for the Village Hall and the police department. And then eventually, as you know, we moved the Veterans Memorial to that side also and had it constructed. So there was a very extensive study. Over 12 years ago, it was determined that the building was antiquated and we should do something for the staff, the boardroom. The boardroom was updated in the recent years. but I don't need to tell most of you, if you go around in the interior space of for our staff, we have a very overall poor facility. And I can tell you, I've been to many village halls in the area, and ours is nothing to brag about. We have old furniture, we have old cabinets, we have poor working spaces. So it's more than past the time to spend this money to see what we possibly can do to the building and see what our options are. So I would urge passage of this for tonight. Any other questions, Tony?
This is Trustee Mittal. I had a quick question about the language. It said conceptual design cost so basically they'll give us an estimate of conceptual design cost today and over 10 years. Does that mean that they'll price out what it would cost to remodel the entire thing, or they're going to come up with a plan to do it like bit by bit?
So our understanding of the contract, our intent of the contract is that we want them to have a 10-year capital plan for all the major elements of the building: roof, carpet, parking lots, outdoor garage space. But we also included language in there to help us evaluate the space needs and if any remodelings are necessary based on the report that they give us based on the working conditions. It's not necessarily intending the report to be, hey, let's move all the walls in the building. But if there were walls, say, that were structurally failing, we'd want to be aware of that. And we'd want to take that into account if they wanted to help us remodel something to eliminate those threats from the building. So again, the primary intent is to make sure we have a good capital grasp of the building's needs. And furthermore, if any are observed that require some sort of renovation, they price those out to help us achieve our needs and mitigate those issues.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other trust?
The last question I had was regarding the payment, and I see we're doing this in 4 phases, and there's a cost to each phase. Are we paying them as those phases are being completed or in a lump sum?
We're paying them in phases.
Okay, thank you.
Any other trustee questions or comments?
This is Trustee Model. I have a question, please.
Go ahead.
Yes, so thank you, Evan. I appreciate you got multiple bids. How many did you get?
We reached out to 4 architectural firms to return numbers. The other 2 simply said they weren't interested in the work.
Okay, thank you for reaching out and soliciting competitive bids, and this low bidder, I see that. Thank you very much. I'm grateful to see that, please. Just so I understand, they're looking at facility things that could be failing. Are they also, it sounds like, kind of looking at how we use the building, how staff works within the building? Is that correct too? They're looking at what happens in the building, not just the structure of the building. Is that correct?
A good example, yes. So yes, a good example is, are people sitting in adequate spaces? If there's a need to spread them out further, what would that cost? If not, then they'll tell us that. So yes, it is also including facilities needs assessment.
Thank you.
Any other trustee comments or questions?
This is Trustee Franzese. I have a couple comments.
Yes, sir.
So I support this expenditure. This is a good path forward to determine our space needs and the useful life of this building. And also the capital plan, the 10-year plan, will give us a roadmap on how to complete the necessary improvements that need to be done in a timely fashion, in an orderly fashion, so that they're accomplished when they're needed and as soon as they're needed, and hopefully with the available funds that will be, hopefully there'll be available funds to complete these needs as well. So I support this 100%. Thank you.
Any other trustee comments or questions? Is there anyone in the public, either in the boardroom or has called in or on YouTube, et cetera, that would like to be heard or ask a question on this topic? If so, you have to unmute yourself, identify yourself, and you'll have the floor. Anyone, Evan?
None, Mayor.
Okay, then can I get a motion to award a professional services contract for Village Hall inspectional services to Leggett Architects of Oak Brook, Illinois, in the amount of $16,000?
So moved.
Second.
So we have Snyder moving and Paveza seconding. Any further comment? Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Mittal?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Franzese?
Yes.
Trustee Chiappa?
Yes.
6-0.
6-0, the motion passes. Thank you. That takes us to 8C, consideration of fiscal year 2021, 2022 budget goals. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the first public part of the annual board village budget preparation for fiscal year 21-22. Certain things have already been discussed, but in general, the budget goals are the first item the board usually considers as part of this process. Now, the budget usually begins in December on the staff level and ends in April at the board level at final passage of ordinance. But a lot of work goes in between December and April to actually assemble the budgets. We understand the needs and the priorities of the community. But budget goals are projects that require funding on a one-time or a recurring basis that achieve some sort of strategic need that the board is trying to provide, achieve, meet, or otherwise upgrade for the village's community as a resident or a whole. In years past, we had a significant number of budget goals be submitted, and I think I counted up to 60 or 65 one year. I wanted to condense those a little bit to make sure we were hitting only the main items that the board really needed to weigh in on from staff's perspective related to what you actually want to do related to those goals. As an example, I remember one year there was a desk chair put in. I don't think that really requires board approval or consideration. That can be taken care of on the staff level. But these are all items that have been aggregated by staff. We've attempted to elongate the process and elaborate a little bit on the budget goals that we are submitting for your consideration. As you'll note, there are about 10. They all have pretty detailed reports, cost estimates, fund assignments, costs and timeframes. We try to be very thorough with what we're telling you regarding the budget process. I should note that 2 goals have already been included in the preliminary FY 21-22 budget. They have been based on previous direction or simply the only way forward in one case. The first is the 2021 road program was directed by the board at a previous board meeting. Second is the County Line Road Sidewalk Project. The reason why we've taken the opportunity to go ahead and include County Line Road Sidewalk Project is that it would actually be cheaper to abandon the project at this point than it would be to simply finish the sidewalk. So I felt as village administrator that it would be prudent simply to include that in the preliminary budget, as I did not imagine that the board would want to pay more to get less for a particular project. We had predicted an early preliminary surplus on January 25th. However, I do want to note this was prior to any scheduled transfers from the general fund and other funds that don't have dedicated revenue sources. As Acting Finance Director Nelson has summarized here, the necessary transfers that you're noting here are in the amount of about $300,000 to the Capital Projects Fund, the Equipment Replacement Fund, and the Stormwater Management Fund for various costs that have already been incurred, or are planned to be incurred, I should say. Again, because of the above transfers, we're projecting a minor surplus in this year's budget of approximately $50,000. Will likely come down more just because we want to transfer more money into other funds subject to your direction, such as into the IT fund or equipment replacement fund. And again, finally, we have yet to complete the final review of the draft budget, which will be distributed to the board later in the winter. We will do that after we receive direction regarding your budget goals tonight. Again, the list of goals submitted by staff is not meant to be exhausted. These are merely things that we felt that the board should be aware of from our perspective. You're free to suggest any goal you like that you want us to look into more fully. Finally, any goal that is not included in the approved FY 21-22 budget at the outset, we plan to continue the waitlist discussion tradition for quarterly consideration, as was established last year in FY 2021, or the present year, I'm sorry. Again, you'll note in your packet, there are about 10 to 12 reports that we've provided to you. I'm asking for either a rank ordering or some sort of direction. We'll do our best to include as many as we can in the budget. But overall, we look forward to receiving and talking with you about the direction you'd like to take regarding each of these. I'll turn it back over to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Trustees, if any of you have any questions or comments, we'd like to get some feedback from you. And nothing is urgent, but it is something we should be addressing. So we have Capital Projects Fund, we have the Equipment Replacement Fund, the Stormwater Management Fund, and various programs in each of those. The 2021 road program as described, which is often a priority of this village. Enterprise vehicle leasing and the Elm Street Culvert engineering costs, all of which are important projects in the village. So would anyone like to start off the discussion?
Trustee Snyder.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for you and Amy spending the extra time pointing out a few situations where we could possibly stop what we're doing overall spending money that's just going to go down to where it's not going to be available in the future, since we're not going to be able to utilize it. Appreciate you guys taking the extra time to provide that information for us. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Is this everything, Evan? I mean, just these 3 items? There was a whole lot more in your packet. I looked at all of it. I thought we were going to talk about some of those others.
Sorry, to your point, there's a number down here. Just I can't fit them all on one page, so I was planning to simply jump to the ones that someone wanted to talk to. For example, about the pension fund. Yes, there are a number down here. I just didn't know where to go. So
So the ones at the top, it sounds like you think are the top priority, the ones that you listed in the summary.
the ones, okay, let me back up. No, your question. So these 3 items, sorry, let me be clear. These 3 items simply rent transfers based on projects that have already been encumbered based on board approval. So for example, capital projects fund needed $230,000 from this $350,000 surplus to close the gap on the 2021 road program. Consider the 2021 road program paid for. It's in the budget. These are 3 transfers that Amy Nelson had made based on the funds that needed additional revenue to complete these projects. And again, most of these were already approved or encumbered by the board at previous direction and approval. All the rest of the goals, and these are in no particular order, I should just note, are down here in the packet. So again, this is the first one, just happened to be first. It's not the best or the worst. It's the funding policy regarding the pension. Second one is the second 71st Street Bridge. And so what we're asking for is in the board's their discretion and direction to tell us, staff, which of these projects are priorities. And if there are not any, if there are some listed that you'd like us to look into further, we know to look into that and return better information either at a future meeting or in the draft budget. So it's really an open-ended discussion.
Thank you for helping clarify that for me. I'm interested. I don't know about the other trustees. I'm sure we'll hear from them. I'm interested to talk about, I know I saw the police pension one. That's an important one to talk about for me, as well as there was some sidewalk stuff in there. I know residents are always concerned about sidewalks and things. I don't remember offhand everything else that's in here, but I'm sure it'll come up. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
This is Trustee Mittal. Regarding the police pension fund, I had a very nice conversation with Amy Nelson this morning, and she was very informative and she actually clarified a lot of stuff. So we were basically going over the increase in the liability and somehow what we have in the fund and what we're contributing is not keeping pace with that. So I asked her, I said, is there some place where we can invest the money so that we get a good return? So that the investment we're making into the police pension fund also keeps pace with inflation. So she mentioned that last year there were a couple of reasons, which I don't want to go into detail, but there was a reason why there was a bigger dip into what we have, the reserves into for the pension fund. But she said that it is invested well. And she shared with me the investment portfolio, and it appears to be satisfactory. So I was reassured by her, and I feel that we do have to find ways and listen to the actuaries when they run the report and share with us what plans we can put into place so that we can be properly funded, or we can properly fund the police pension. Thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, Anita, thank you for bringing it up. Just to give a little bit more background, one of the things the legislature did do, I get my years mixed up, but it was it was the previous May, maybe Chief can help me, maybe of 19. There's approximately, my number may be off here, but there's 600 and something like 636 different police pension boards around the state of Illinois. Almost everybody has their own. We have their own. And the legislature passed a bill to combine the police pension boards and the fire pension boards into one police pension board and one fire pension board for more efficiency. We're obviously obligated where those funds can be placed and how aggressive those funds can be invested, obviously not very aggressively. And so that was one step. The other step that we looked at here this board looked at and what I asked to be looked at. I know you and Joe especially were talking about different types of formulas. We are continuing, and I've asked Amy and Evan to keep their eye on alternatives because we do have things like reserves. We do have other sources of income where we might be able to put more money towards our police pension obligation. That obligation is growing not because of anything the board or the village does. It's because of what Springfield passes, the so-called unfunded mandates, and then they expect us villages all around the state to come up with the money. So we continue to look at how we can invest within the confines of the police pension board that we have, but invest money so that it can grow better for us. One of the ways was maybe a lump sum payment, and we kicked around some numbers, and we'll come back to you with some more of those numbers. And so that's what the staff is looking for us, for example, to come back to you with numbers about investing into the police pension fund, maybe $500,000, maybe $1 million, maybe $100,000 more every year over 10 years, and which ones give us the best bang for buck, so to speak. It isn't that easy, but if that is a priority now, remember we put a lot of this on hold because of COVID, but if that now becomes a priority, which I think we'd all say it probably is, that is some direction we can give the staff so that Amy and Evan and others that support them can come back and make some recommendations to this board.
Thank you.
So that is one, when Evan's looking for direction, that is one thing that he's looking at. Evan, unless you have strong feelings, I'm not quite sure the bridge over 71st Street is a priority in the short term. It was a long-term vision, of course, of the building of the Village Center. Those of you involved then, Al, Guy for sure, remember that one of the proposals was, one of the projects that were going to be completed there was a bridge connecting 71st Street over the Salt Creek there that would hit Wolf Road and then continue straight up the ramp to 294. That was supposed to relieve any traffic congestion that was caused by the Village Center. Of course, that hasn't happened. We have 35% of the Village Center that has never been leased. So that's not necessarily a priority, but it's still on.
I think that was our question was, ultimately, there's $850,000 in an assigned fund balance in the general fund. And frankly, the village has not taken meaningful steps to try and build this project for the next 10 years. And we at least wanted to talk about it from the consideration perspective of, would it be better to reassign that 850 to something else? Or if you'd like, if we want to continue on this road, we need to find an additional $3.5 million to complete the project. So this is not necessarily a let's spend money goal. This is more of a, how would you like to allocate your resources goal?
And that could be used
Right.
rather.
Some background for that also, when that bridge had to be built by contract, Opus North came to me and the board then and said they just could not, they were deep within the recession. They just did not have the funds and the wherewithal to build that bridge. And we negotiated an $800,000 buyout of their contract obligation. So we relieved them of building that bridge. Realistically, looking at their numbers, they were never going to be able to do it anyhow. They had already lost Opus North, they had lost Opus Southwest, and Opus Southeast all went bankrupt. Our own Village Center was one of the only things standing in their portfolio. So we were fortunate, in my opinion, to get $800,000 to put away. So there's $800,000 not even in our reserves. That might be money, for example, that we could come back to you and say, we luckily have 800, now I think it's grown a bit, 850,000 that we can maybe put towards the police pension. How do we best do that and meet our obligations? So here's a recommendation. Evan, and to the board, we look at that $800,000 and $850,000 that's sitting there. We are not going to build that bridge in the foreseeable future, if ever. And maybe we use that money without even going into our reserves to see what we can do for the police pension obligation.
I do want to clarify, Mayor. So this is in our general fund balance. It is listed as assigned. Signed is just one level north of unassigned. Unassigned is you can do anything you want with it. That is not spoken for in any capacity. Assigned is simply, it is in your reserves. It is counted in your $5.3 million reserves, but it is currently assigned to this project. And we either suggested that you either go forward with this project or uncouple it from the project to be moved another way. So it would be use of reserves, but it is currently not available for use for anything other than this per board direction. So I think we're hearing a motion or a direction at least to reconsider uses of this 850 from you.
Yeah.
That's what the board's okay with that.
Does Trustee Francis have a comment?
Yes, sir.
So this topic of the 71st Street Bridge comes up periodically, but however, with the village center still not at full capacity, and the possibility that the TCF property may be developed, we still don't have the full traffic impact on 72nd Street. So we don't really know if this bridge would help us out, because we don't know what the traffic impacts are going to be when the corporate center, the village center area is completely built out. So I would suggest we table any discussions of a bridge until that property is developed, or when the negotiations for the property start to be developed, and possibly look at other ways to spend the money.
Okay, I think that's consistent with what, so it is, I stand corrected, thank you, Evan, that $850,000 is technically still in our reserves, but it is coupled, or it is earmarked. We would have to take the earmark designation off it, and maybe use it towards police pension obligations. So is that something consensus-wise we could have the staff start working on and come back to the board when they're ready?
I would agree with that.
I would agree.
Who said that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear who said that.
Snyder.
Okay, Trustee Snyder, okay. So we have consensus?
Yes.
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 All right. I thank you very much. Evan, you have direction, all right?
Okay, any of the other goals you want to talk about?
If there's others, yes.
Excuse me, point of order, Mr. Mayor, can we just go down the list rather than jump around?
Sure.
And if there's no discussion on any one of these goals, we just move on. If there's discussion, that's fine.
Sure. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, that's
So the
Thank
first one we've generally talked about, which is the long-term funding policy for the police pension fund. Currently, the policy is simply to fund the state minimum. Both of our actuaries actually do not recommend this as a long-term funding strategy. They recommend a much higher amount of contribution to get to 90% by 2040. Mayor had recently talked about legislation at the state level. There's actually new legislation that's been introduced this past week. It is related to firefighters, not police, to be clear. But I talked to you a year ago about the possibility of funds moving from 2040 to a 2050 amortization date, and that has indeed been introduced in the state assembly. On the firefighter side, it has not yet come out on the police department side, so that does not affect us. But in general, this would be looking at working with the police pension fund to have a significant modeling endeavor paid for by the police pension fund, not necessarily to the village itself, but to look at writing a strategy to get to 90% by 2040. That would basically be the policy. We'd have to come up with numbers to actually get us there. As you can see, the recommended contribution is a little bit higher than the statutory minimum. We can see the statutory minimum has significantly increased our funding percentage, something in relation to our funding timing. You know, our actuary was measuring things in April of this year. The stock market was not exactly on fire in April this year, so we did lose a little bit of value there, but we've made a lot of money. At any rate, this would be working with the ad hoc pension committee, presenting sets of scenarios to the village board at a future date to help increase the amount of funding percentage for the village. Moving down, this is the 71st Street Bridge project, which we've discussed. This is the third goal. This is the police station debt service obligation. Again, this is not necessarily asking for you to spend money. This is asking for you to make a decision, though. The call date for the current debt certificate, which was refinanced in 2017, is due in December 22, but the call date is 1 year prior, December of 2021, which means you need to do one of three things related to this. Retire the principal debt terms either by selling Rustic Acres as was originally proposed or providing alternate sources of revenue. Refinance the debt and delay the payment of the principal payment, or explore partial refinancing options to pay a portion of the principal due 18 months from now. We estimate that refinancing any element of the principal is about $60,000. I do want to note the current shortfall is $1,058,794. So again, that can come from anywhere from unassigned balances. General fund balance. If we were to sell Rustic Acres, we could use the sale of land. The only thing I would like to note is if Rustic Acres is sold, we will need to come up with a new solution for the public works facility, which is located at Rustic Acres. That is currently our only salt dome, and we need a salt dome based on what you've seen the last month or so. So we would need to pay to either move that or build one at an alternate site in the village. A salt dome, just so you're aware, is about $300,000, $350,000. So there is a significant cost impact to actually building a village facility. So again, this is asking for a decision as to one of these three things occurring by December of 2021. You do not need to make a decision about that tonight, but you will in the upcoming fiscal year.
I have a real quick question.
Please.
The 1 million is what we would owe and pay this off until 1 million.
1058794 is the remaining shortfalls.
Right. And so we have 5 million in reserves. We could potentially pay this off and be done with it, not owe anymore. I mean, I know we're paying a very good rate of interest on it. In fact, we're making more on our reserves.
Correct.
We are, but 60 grand to refinance it, everything else, it probably starts to add up. I'd be interested in looking at paying it off, but maybe there's a better option. So thank you for clarifying for me.
Sure.
Starts to look like Rustic Acres isn't a great deal to sell either. If we've got it trying to get $1 million, it's going to cost us 350 plus this plus that. Maybe we should. Just keep
It is more complicated than I would have liked it to have been, but
Yeah, I see that.
at any point. This is a goal for a new website.
Back up a second, please.
Please.
Any comment?
On the Rustic Acres project?
Yes, no, on that whole topic of paying off the police station. So you presented three alternatives there. Could you put some dollar numbers to those so we can make a decision on that before December?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions on this goal?
Right, so we have lots of options in the sense that, as pointed out, we have more than enough in our reserves to pay it off. If that makes fiscal sense, basically $1.1 million. If we want to pay some of it off and refinance the rest, we have a very good interest rate now, and interest rates, as we know, are staying low, and maybe that's an option. Exploring selling Rustic Acres has its own hair. So Evan, I'd like you to break it down for the board. Look at keep it in different silos. Keep Rustic Acres on the side and tell us what the pros and cons of selling it are, and keep that in a separate silo. And then as for the police station itself, whether or not to pay off the entire note or pay off some of it and refinance some of it. And then to the extent the board wants to look at both at the same time, that's fine, but keep them in separate silos so the board can consider them independently or together, okay?
Understood.
This is Trustee Mittal. I kind of want to piggyback on what Mayor Grasso said. If we could also see what rate the debt could potentially be refinanced at and what interest rate our reserves are earning, and really do a dollar-to-dollar comparison and do a projection that will the loan be bigger at the end of the term, and is it justified to let it grow, or should we just pay it off? And yeah, so, and then we can kind of decide if we want to just refinance a part of the debt or just pay off most of it.
We'll give you a final cost option for everything.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions related to this goal?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Trustee Skiappa. Regarding the property at Rustic Acres, if we can get some data, I mean, do you know offhand how long that property has been for sale?
Been for sale as part of this particular debt issuance since 2007. We've owned it for a significantly longer period of time. If you go down there and you look at the old public works offices, you can kind of get a sense of the history of verbiage in a building. I think it's been there for 50 years. We have offered it for sale. We offered it for sale for $1,875 in 2007. We had no bites until 2016. We reappraised it at 1.5 in 2016. Now, the way that municipal land sales work is that we have to appraise it, and then we have to offer it by board resolution at a specific price. We sell it for less, we have to vote to actually sell it for less than the appraisal. We can direct staff to sell it for a higher price than the appraisal though. At this point, we've received one, I don't want to call it even a hard offer, but it was not even close to 1.5. I don't even know if it was half of that number. That was 3 or 4 years ago at this point. So in fairness, I don't think we've had a lot of proactiveness or aggression in actually trying to sell it.
Okay.
But at the same time, there are a lot of moving pieces to actually selling the land, which generally prohibits or precludes sales from occurring more efficiently otherwise than if it was ready to go.
This is Trustee Mittal. You had mentioned that the Public Works Department would have to be relocated. Do we have a cost estimate, what it would cost to relocate them? And would they have to rent a spot, or where would they be relocated? Also, where would we store the salt? So
that's part of the discussion that we will bring back, but just for posterity's sake, it's only the salt storage. There's also an old barn down there that the Public Works is using to store miscellaneous items, such as some of our seasonal equipment. We would need to relocate the salt dome for sure. We would probably leave the old buildings for the new owner if we were to sell it. A new salt storage facility, about a 1,200 ton salt storage facility, is estimated by our Public Works Director would be $350,000. Because they're usually very unique shapes and designs, they would require significant lead time to accomplish design and build. We have engaged Legat Architects, the people who you just approved to do the Village Hall study, to perform a site analysis of the Commerce Street facility to locate it there. However, it's a smaller site. We'd have to work with our neighbors at Nanaphase, who we have a great relationship with, to determine how we would actually put that together, because while we own the whole property, we don't legally have access on a daily basis to the entire property. There are some wetlands back there we want to be careful of. So we have not identified a long-term solution at this time. We anticipate having that report ready for you this coming fiscal year, so we can make a determination either way. We do note that we could pursue temporary interim shared storage. However, we only recommend that being for a short period of time, talking about maybe one winter. We do not want to get into a long-term sharing agreement with somebody unless it really made sense. Glen Ellen recently purchased the DuPage County Forest Reserve's old building, which is a gigantic building, and they share it with a few other municipalities. No such building like that exists in our area. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. I don't want to belabor the point, but I think Mayor Grasso made the original discussion pretty salient, which is come back with some siloed options to determine the pros, cons, and costs of each option overall.
Now, let me add one more thing. Willowbrook's facility, I believe, is just off of Madison, not too far, obviously from Burr Ridge, right off of Madison. Would you at least lob a call in there and see if there's any ability to share a salt facility with them that makes sense to them, and whether or not it's storage, whether or not we pay them some rent, whether or not we combine purchasing, whatever. But their storage unit is very close to Burr Ridge. It's right there off of Madison. And so lob a call in there just to see if that's a pipe dream or it's an actual possibility. Okay.
We will continue to work with all of our neighbors on that.
Okay. Any other questions on this topic? Okay, go to the next one, please.
This is one coming out of administration. This is for a new website. A lot of our services are being planned to move online. Our website, frankly, lacks a lot of the conventional 2021 standard user experiences that most people have experienced. In the past year, a lot of people have moved their business online. This request is to completely tear down and build a brand new website for the village. It would have all the integrated features that almost all modern municipal websites would have. It would have payment functions. It would have permit functions. It would have just a lot better features that are more up to date with the current environment regarding village communications and posture. Any questions on this one?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. One of the complaints I get about the website, like you said, it's hard to search, it's clunky. I'm in favor of redesigning the website. I'd like to also redesign it with an air for more transparency, waiting to find, bid information, contract information. I think all that kind of stuff is really important. Is that the kind of stuff that in your mind you would also include in this?
Yep. So there's a standard, it's actually not a law, but it's a standard that's been put out in the state of Illinois about transparency. We typically have 10 to 11, I forget the exact number, but it would have contract bids, the PA 97 disclosure, which is what all the staff makes on salaries, union contracts, minutes, all that sort of stuff would go on a transparency page, so it's very easy to find. We already have one on the website. It's not as built out as I would like, but that would certainly be kind of a head and shoulders goal of the new website, is to make it easy to use, easy to find all information, but certainly have a, we'll call it a more dedicated source for sensitive stuff per se, like the dollars and cents.
Yeah, I think you're correct when you said the transparency section is there. Not I wouldn't even say built. It's very clunky, and people have complained to me they can't find the information. It takes effect in the document center. So thank you for recognizing that. I would be in support of this very much.
Yeah, I think the website needs either a complete overhaul or certainly has to be worked on. So I'm glad Evan put this on there too. Anybody else on this topic?
This is Trustee Mittal. I totally support updating the website. I think it's important to keep up with technology. The transparency would be very nice, and it would lead to more resident satisfaction and probably more use if the site works well. So I am for updating this website.
Okay, next one, Evan.
Thank you. This is a resident survey. So we've got kind of a, as I say, a confluence of things happening in 2021. We've got an election of a mayor, board clerk, as well as some planned goal setting sessions for the board in the summer, as well as the police department has a clear requirement to conduct a community survey occurring in 21. Again, that's everything occurring in 2021 there. I'm recommending that the village hire a professional public opinion firm to perform a resident survey. This would be an independent analysis of the residential opinion of the village's service. It would be a very rich data analysis than the standard model that we use. Right now, we use an electronic link via SurveyMonkey. I'm not unhappy with what we use now. I just think for an additional $10,000, we can get a 200-page survey, which really richly talks about all the service levels, all the competence levels, all the satisfaction levels on a Likert scale that all the residents could get into. There are many local public opinion surveys, surveying companies that exist. I've listed 3 or 4 there. We normally spend $10,000 on a resident survey because we mail it to everybody anyway. So there already is going to be costs included in next year's budget, regardless of what happens with this particular goal. However, it was one of my goals is to say, with all the new change or new reseeding or whatever occurring in 2021, new terms starting, along with the CALIA requirement occurring in 2021, I wanted to offer a smaller investment for the board to look at a pretty significant service upgrade in terms of its resident surveys. This is one that I pulled from Glenview. This is from the company ETC. I maybe went a little overkill here, but you can see there's a lot of data that we normally don't see. And I thought it would be helpful to really suggest that we gather a rich analysis of the community. Just to give you an idea of how rich, it would be a pretty targeted interview analysis with 400 households. We'd get at least probably 800 to 1,000 people responding to a survey. That's not 400 people, it's 400 households. So however many people in that household, they all work from there. But again, I put in, this is merely, I would say 10 to 20% of Glenview's survey that I saw online, so I didn't want to do the whole thing, but I didn't want to offer this as a suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, any comments on this subject?
Trustee Paveza,
Yes, sir.
considering the conditions that we've been under, I think it's a good idea, but I would recommend we wait a year or two till we're more or less back to normal.
That's a point.
Can we wait a year with the CALIA recertification?
Ask me.
Doesn't this happen every 3 years?
He's coming up to answer it now.
CALIA standard minimum, we should do it every 3 years. We haven't done one since 2016.
Right. If we haven't done one since 2016, and we've gone through some very trying times, as Al said, maybe that's something we should definitely do. Can this be done piecemeal? I hate doing things piecemeal, but Evan, can it be done piecemeal?
Yeah, we can always do the Survey Monkey at any time. We simply wanted to understand if, if the timing was right or was not right, if you wanted to invest in a better product. We could certainly do we'll call it a Survey Monkey this year and maybe this next year as an example. That's certainly an option. But we did want to point out that we are overdue for a CALEA survey to occur.
Yeah, this is trustee model. I'm in favor of surveying residents, coronavirus or not. I don't know what that would have to do with the village's services and stuff. Opinions of it. I think we should. I'm interested in surveying them. I think that would support the CALEA goal and get you hopefully more robust survey and more robust answers. But
I should note, just to clarify, this is a contactless survey. It would be done all by mail or by phone. So there would not be ETC or whoever going to a door and bothering people. This would be done all via mail or phone.
we should always.
Right, and then in the past, I think that while there have been lots of staff hours put into trying to get surveys out, prepared out, the money spent, I think you can see some of the amounts of money here. Am I correct, Evan, or do you have the history that the response rate has been, shall we say, meager?
Response rate has not been bad. I would say this just would give us a much richer understanding of what the residents are actually thinking. So instead of saying, are you happy with the service, yay or nay, it would be, how happy are you and why? It would give you a little bit more narrative as to what the context is. So again, we certainly can design a resident survey that can go out electronically via Survey Monkey at any point. Again, this is simply an option.
And the survey company might bring us some more suggestions on how to survey and how better to survey. I mean, we know how to run a village, maybe not necessarily how to survey people, right? I'm assuming that's some of the expertise they bring to the table, the kind of questions.
They would do this. They do this for a living, and this is their whole job, and can get more different things out of people.
Evan, following up what Mayor Grasso stated, when you went to Glenview, difference between if they did the Survey Monkey in the past and when they went to ETC, was there a larger increase, 5% more or 10% more contacted so that the more information was?
I think I can answer your question this way. So in the 2016 survey, we got 240 responses. This would give us 1,000.
You're confident that we get
You contractually guaranteed to get a certain amount of households responded to a survey. If they said, we're going to give you a 400 household survey, they can't give you a 280 household survey and say, oh, we tried. They try until they get their number.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
guaranteed to get a certain amount of feedback out of it.
That makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Then, yeah, if we can get a certain minimum amount of response, because my recollection is that this response has not been robust. I always read that as people weren't that worried about things not happening in the village, but since we have been through a trying year, maybe we will get more response. And I think maybe we should consider having a town meeting or two just to see if we can get some people out once we can meet regularly. Maybe over the summer, even outdoors, if we can do something and maybe get some more active participation from the residents.
So Glenview said we want 500 surveys here. 512 completed a survey. In Glenview, that's 50,000 people though. So if we got 500 out of Burr Ridge, that'd be a significant amount of the population responding to a survey, which would be great. Good response to a survey is 5%. 400 households in the village of Burr Ridge would be basically 1/3 of the adults responding. Be a very, very rich data set. As part of this, they would also come and present at a meeting. They wouldn't just rely on me to do it. They'd stand by their work. They'd fly out here. They'd talk to us for a night. And they would take any suggestions as to what they might want to close on. They usually say, what else do you want us to close on? But certainly we can, if we wanted to do this, we could design more of an outreach feature with them and help publicize it even further.
Yeah, and I'd like to know how to get our homeowners associations involved. Obviously, a lot of our residents don't live in homeowners associations, but at least that's a portal and an access point in order to explore as many ways as possible to get as much resident feedback as possible. So thank you.
This is Trustee Maytel. I just had a quick question. So let's say, I mean, I'm totally in favor of some of the survey because, you know, it'll give us good information, which will help us with the goal setting and the planning process for the village. It'll give us good direction. If we were to move ahead with this company, would they give us an opportunity to kind of guide them as to what we're looking for, or what kind of feedback we're looking for, so that they can change their survey or they can adapt their survey to our needs?
Yes, so what they do is they ask, what kind of modules are you looking for?
Okay.
So if you were to go to, I don't know, pick an economic development town that does nothing but grow, say, you know, Burr Ridge 40 years ago with lots of land internally, they would be asking more economic development questions about the future land use. Burr Ridge is fairly built out, so we would probably have less questions about that. We would certainly want to know about what kind of stores, or are you comfortable or happy with the options downtown, but we would not necessarily be focusing on extensive new home growth, for example. We could tailor it to say, are you happy with the police services? Would you be in favor of more flock? Would you be in favor of whatever? And so, yes, you can tailor it based on modules.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we beat this horse enough tonight. Come up with some ideas, Evan, with staff, and I think the board wants to discuss this. It might not be the highest priority, but I think at some juncture at the right meeting in 2021, a couple of months from now, we should put this item on and discuss it in a little bit more detail. Okay?
Next one's the Elm Street Culvert. This is actually a waitlisted item from last year, but considering the cost, we wanted to bring it forward for your attention. This is a $370,000 item. It would repair the Elm Street Culvert over Elm Street. I do want to note that there is currently very little fund balance in the Stormwater Management Fund, and so if you wanted to fund this, this would require a transfer from general fund balance of $370,000. Do not project that there's enough going to be in that fund to cover it without use of fund balance.
Any projection as to, what does this say?
You would need $370,000 to cover the cost of this based on the current fund balance of the Stormwater Fund.
Okay.
Could we back up a second, please? So, the total cost is $370,000, of which engineering is $50,000.
There's $50,000 in engineering, there's $50,000 in further construction management, and there's $320,000 in actual construction costs.
Thank you. We've already accounted for $45,000 of that $50,000 of engineering, correct?
No, there's two $50,000 costs related to this project. The first phase one design has already been achieved through that earlier transfer. The second construction design is going to be incurred with this particular project if you move forward with it at all. If you don't, then we would not incur that cost.
So, okay, do we have the detail engineering in our hands?
I gave you the Elm Street Culvert recommendation. Certainly Dave can talk more about that if you'd like. If you'd like more information, I'd be happy to provide it to you though. Are we talking about the HLR study that they gave us?
No, not the study. We went through the study and the cost options. And we prepared a recommendation, submitted to the board. The board approved the $320,000 option to pursue. And then we authorized the engineering company to pursue the detail engineering of that option. I'm asking, do we have that detail engineering?
I'm going to ask Dave to answer that question then.
Is it complete, or is it still in process?
The detailed plans, the engineering are all ready.
Okay.
I can't hear him. So maybe you should get up to the microphone, please.
Just had to turn it on. The detailed plans are nearly complete. Need to be submitted for permitting. We were just kind of pausing to wait to see, are we going to proceed to that next step, because there can be initial steps taken or
Sure.
additional
Okay.
steps talked about in the stormwater committee tomorrow too.
Okay, thank you, because we were told that this could fail at any time, this culvert, and then we would be in dire straits if we didn't have our documents and drawings ready for permit. So it sounds like we're very, very close. Thank you.
So Evan, what we need, I think what the board would need on this item, we had a lot of discussion on it. We did approve a project. We did approve one of the alternatives that was going to be the 320,000. Guy points out that, you know, there was indication it could fail. Staff needs to tell us and the board if this is something that should be moved up on the priority list.
Well,
Maybe not tonight, but soon.
Dave's going to give you a quick brief on that.
can't predict the future, but we do not anticipate imminent failure. We know that the corrugated metal pipes, when they fail, there's no repairs. There's nothing we can do other than replacing that whole thing. We had that happen on County Line Road by Deer Path Trail. It took us another 6 months then to get the engineering and the project constructed. In the meantime, roads were flooding, et cetera. This is one condition we had determined would need to be replaced immediately. Should something like that should failure come, because it is Elm Street, it is right by Elm School, it is a walk to school route, et cetera. So with that being said, it was the type of pipe that would fail quickly, but we're watching it very closely and we don't see anything happening yet that would elicit, an immediate failure.
Okay, then, based on the engineering study, and maybe in next week or the week after, I'd like to talk to you and Evan about whether or not I would recommend by the next meeting, the board considering, funding this project. If the board were to fund it, I suppose the construction season is, how long would this project take?
Should take about 7 to 8 weeks total, from first cut to finished pavement.
And is that something that if the board, let's say, decided it in February or March, we could get it out, get it done before the winter sets in at the end of 2021?
That's our plan, to proceed with the detailed plans as if we were going forward and then put the brakes on it when it's time to go to bid. We'll have those plans ready, things will be permitted, ready to go. And then it'll just be a judgment to go to that next step. We would try to get it constructed in the summertime. Still, Elm School would be, assuming Elm School would go back to full session, would not be in session during the summer, so we can get it constructed without school traffic.
Okay, so please continue with that coordination with Evan. Keep me in the loop, and maybe this will come up shortly again as an agenda item for the board to consider authorizing this to get done. It's something we probably shouldn't wait on. It has to get done. Why wait if we can find the funds for it? So keep coordinating and keep me up to date, and we'll get it on an agenda soon. Thank you.
Understood. One additional question, please, Dave.
Yes.
How long would you anticipate, you may have probably answered this before, but how long would you anticipate the permitting process taking?
It'll be a few weeks. It could be up to 6 weeks at DuPage County,
Okay.
but we've told them to accelerate if there's something.
Thank you. If it was an emergency, they could accelerate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on this goal?
No, I just want to say we had a lot of residents that came in last year complaining about this when it was flooding. We had heavy storm water, you'll recall. Yvonne Mayer was one of the people commenting, and others that live there. And I know we talked about the caulk, whatever you put on the road, the black, the crack seal, patch seal, how all the flooding blew it out. So there was safety concerns from residents. There was, Mr. Francisa, I remember talking about the hydraulic pressure blowing out the crack seal. So I'm in favor too of it. I'm pleased to see that we'll talk about this. Thank you.
Okay, next, Evan.
Next is the Pathway Fund. This is the Pathway Fund was a recommendation by the Pathway Commission who met a few weeks ago. First is there's a $100,000 grant that we received from the state a few years ago. It was originally applied to the Garfield Avenue project. Since we are recommending that we move the $100,000 grant from Garfield Avenue to the County Line Road sidewalk, because at this point we've got enough into the County Line Road project wherein if we were to stop and do nothing further, we'd have to send a lot of money back to the state and a number of other grant sources that we've received grant funding for. So it'd be cheaper to just finish the sidewalk. So we're recommending that we transfer, which we legally are able to do, transfer the $100,000 grant currently applied to the Garfield project to the County Line Road project. Doing so would require no transference of funds. We have enough funds in the Sidewalk Pathways Fund to complete that entire project in the next summer. Second project is Garfield Avenue. This is the dead-end sidewalk north of Waterford and Willowbrook to Rogers Farm Road, again in Willowbrook. There was a discussion to have a joint agreement between Willowbrook and Burr Ridge to fund this project. There was a 30% participation from the village of Willowbrook to fund this on the east side of the street. There was also a number of residents who opposed us building it on the east side of the street. We had significant discussion at the board level as well as on a more informal basis with the residents down there. We have not met with them just because of COVID. We just haven't had the opportunity to meet with them again. Willowbrook has said that they will not pay any of this project if it's on the west side of Garfield Avenue. And so if we were to build the Garfield Avenue sidewalk, it would need to be determined to either move forward on the east side or west side of Garfield Avenue, as well as paying the entire $160,000 to $170,000 fund by itself, assuming that the $100,000 grant is transferred to County Line Road. Are there any questions about Garfield Avenue at this time?
This is Trustee Mittal. Now, maybe I don't understand the map very well, but wouldn't the west side of Garfield actually be in Willowbrook because Roger Farm and Waterford are in Willowbrook?
Correct.
Okay. So
would also
that's interesting that Willowbrook doesn't want anything to do with it then.
They do not want to have the sidewalk be in, quote, people's backyards.
Ah.
In the front yards on our side.
Which I'm gonna be talking to Mayor Trilla more about that. That is not too far from where I live. It's walkable. I've walked it a couple of times. I understand the not in somebody's backyard, but in fact there is lots of land. There's lots of shrubbage. A sidewalk on the west side is the more direct route to connect the sidewalk. If it's on the east side, you actually have to cross the street then to continue on the pathway. If you were going to walk on the pathway, it makes more sense to be on the west side. So let's table this one, and we'll table it anyhow because we have to go ahead. I think the dynamics are such we have to go ahead with County Line Road. I'll get involved with Mayor Trilla on this. Rogers Farm, I would recommend that he at least ask the residents if they wouldn't want, if I own one of those pieces of property, I'm very familiar with them, I would want a sidewalk, quote, in my backyard. It wouldn't really be in my backyard, but I could get on that sidewalk and walk. The other way, I'd have to have my kids or me cross the street. So I'll continue to talk to Mayor Trilla about that, and let's just get the County Line Road project done, and then we'll address Garfield.
Trustee Francis, do you have a question?
I had a general question, actually. So if we take the $100,000 from the Garfield Avenue project and transfer it to the County Line Road project, can we apply for another $100,000 grant for the Garfield Avenue project?
No, at least I'm not aware of any funding being available.
Okay, thank you.
And I have one quick question. So what else, well, actually two questions. So if we transfer it to the County Line Road project, does that allow us to complete it with no additional money, or is there additional money required? That's my first question.
There would be, I'm sorry.
Please, you could answer that.
There would be a balance of fund in the sidewalk pathway fund, which would pay down. And so there would not need to facilitate additional transfers in that fund to complete County Line Road if we apply the $100,000 to that project.
Got it. So the sidewalk fund plus the 100 could finish that project off, nothing new out of the general fund, and done. Okay. And just sidewalks in general, maybe I should have asked this sooner, but just like a road, once you put them in, it's the kind of thing you need to maintain forever and ever and ever. Do we know what they cost to maintain approximately for?
If you wouldn't mind. This is, just to be clear, this is purely asphalt pathway replacements. This is not the extent of sidewalks throughout the village. And most of the village is sidewalk inventory is concrete. These are, so example, being County Line Road from Burbridge Parkway, from 79th to, from 79th to Burbridge Parkway along County Line Road. This is that multi-use path that runs by Ombriant. This is an example of an asphalt that will eventually need to be replaced. There are two that are in worse shape than others. The first is the 79th Street pathway that runs from County Line to Burr Oak Lane. We've got some longitudinal cracking, utility patches. It's kind of an older pathway. Second is Crammel Drive from 87th to Madison. These are all, to do all these basically require between $150,000 to $180,000 a year for the next 4 years, talking about $700,000 number to replace all these at some point. We do dedicate about $20,000 to $25,000 a year, generally speaking, to maintaining concrete sidewalks. Most of them are newer just because of the state of the village. And we also have people build them when they subdivide, or they provide us funds into this fund when they build, when they have subdivisions. So either way, we get either sidewalks or sidewalk fund. These are, again, multi-use paths. You might see a bike on these. They're a little bit more substantial, but they would be going from asphalt to concrete in the future.
Anything else? Okay, Evan, it sounds like there's probably consensus to move forward with County Line Road. We almost have to under the circumstances. I will inject myself with Mayor Trilla on Garfield, see if we have some better options. I just don't like it on the east side. It's harder to do engineering wise, and then it really doesn't solve the problem because you have to end up crossing Garfield anyhow to stay on the pathway. So anyhow, let's do County Line Road and keep Garfield on the back burner at this point.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks. Next goal is a dedicated communication system for the Public Works Department. This is currently something we manage. The old VHF radios, village issued cell phones. It's a goal of ours to replace these cell phones, or at least a semblance of the cell phones, with a more up-to-date Starcom radio system. Some of the VHF radios are so old, we don't even bother putting them in police vehicles anymore. They're just outdated now that we've got the new DUCOM facility up and running. There is simply much greater interoperability with our current police department and tri-state and Pleasant View fire districts, as well as the reliability of simply having a trunk system that is much more reliable for our guys in the trucks. If anybody's ever sat in a truck and you need to communicate with someone else, you do not want to be fumbling with a cell phone. Usually they would need to stop, make a call, keep going, waste time. A radio is simply much more secure and much safer for our guys out in the street. This is a basic one-time cost of about $30,000. This is a simple buy, plug in, and go. They can communicate with our police guys. They can have much more seamless communication in events like we're having tonight. That's it.
Okay, what's your recommendation here?
I would recommend we do this as soon as we can.
Right. And what's the total cost? 29.4?
It's 29, it's 30 grand one time. We would go down to about $3,000 a year thereafter. We would just simply need to maintain some annual maintenance for our basically facility stock, as well as having some licenses that we'd have to buy to access the Starcom network. So pretty much a one-time cost.
Have consensus amongst the board to get it done?
It seems like a priority to me. This is trustee model. It seems to make sense. I defer to the chief if he thinks we shouldn't be doing it, but it's in here, so I assume we should.
This is technically for public works.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. But Chief, to be fair, Chief did help us put together this particular proposal.
I don't hear any pushback here, Evan, so I think everybody's okay with you doing that.
Okay, moving on. This is something we've talked about several times. This is the village-wide smart LPR system. This would consist of buying, and this is on buying 20 LPR cameras. It says LRP there. It should say LPR cameras, as well as incorporating them with Flock. This is $60,000 per year, but this is intended to build what we'll call an entrance-exit ingress-egress system, wherein we could place these at any point on the village right-of-way and allow us to have a much more secure system. Chief gives examples of 91st Street near McDonald's, South Frontage Road near Shell, Wolf Road, all the major intersections that we tend to think about when we talk about coming into the village. I do want to note again, though, this is a $60,000 per year item. This is not a one-time cost, but this would be essentially the same thing that you would have that you've already approved for the subdivision cameras, but these would be village-owned cameras that are not party to any subdivision per se.
And would this be an extension of the Flock contract that we just entered into at the end of 2020?
Exactly.
Let's see, in my opinion, I'll obviously defer to the board. My opinion is let's see how the Flock current contract is, how it performs, how the chief likes it, feedback we get before we start committing to another $60,000 per year when, budget was strained from COVID. So I think maybe this is a back burner item, but I certainly defer to the board.
Well, I'm curious, this is a trustee model. If we did this, could we save some money on policing, in the future, once you saw how this went? Is there a possibility to save some money?
In what way? In what way?
Well, I'm not an expert, but I wonder if it would be less overtime or less, you're monitoring more, you're catching it actively, you know, with these new systems. That's the idea of this technology, right? So I'm curious to hear, there might be the potential for savings in other areas, maybe.
Welcome the chief, but I don't see how cameras would cut overtime or are you suggesting having less police officers? Because I don't think.
I'm not sure what the solutions are, but we just keep doing the same thing. We're never going to get to anything better. This seems like an interesting technology solution that might have some other, you know, reasonable trade-offs. I'm not sure.
Well, it is an interesting, it's a very good technology, but as a replacement for 20, I disagree.
I didn't say as a replacement, but, you know, maybe you could have, I don't know, two on staff, you know, you might not need as many bodies on call all the time instead of just driving around randomly because you've got them, you know, somebody watching this from a central location.
I don't think people are, officers in this village are driving around randomly. I think they're on patrol as they customarily do in this village and other villages. I don't see the relationship, Chief. If you see the relationship, I don't see a recommendation to invest in a camera system. The basis of that to be that we cut our police force. I see that as not a responsible thing to do. I don't think the cost should be expended at this point until we really get our feet under us on the Flock contract. Now, maybe 6 months from now we look at it, but let's get some experience with the Flock contract first before we consider this.
Understood.
Question?
Yes.
Trustee Ortiz?
Yes.
On the implementation procedure that's proposed here, 20 cameras, 20 license plate recognition cameras proposed in initial deployment in strategic locations. If those 20 were deployed, would all of our ingress and egress points be covered, or would we still need additional cameras to cover all ingress and egress points?
We would need additional cameras.
Okay, could you let us know how many additional that would be?
I will.
So that
We entertained
the
this.
first phase, and there might be a second phase of some additional cameras.
We entertained this about 10 years ago with a proposal from Motorola for a mesh network, which millions of dollars. So as you can see over the 10 years, we're dealing with Flock cameras. And the difference between what was proposed in December and what this is, what was proposed in December is an interface.
Mhm.
The HOA cameras, these are LPR cameras that we're deploying.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
But we can give you that.
We talk about covering all ingress and egress points in the village. Just want to understand that there might be a phase one, maybe a phase two, if this was to be pursued.
Yes, there would be.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further?
No, nothing further on that, Evan.
Thank you. This is the next goal, I think it's the last goal, the police department security and video system upgrade. The system at the police department is aging. It's reaching the end of its useful life, but at some point we will need to replace these items. This is access control, facility video monitoring, et cetera. Be about $120,000. We would need to get slightly more precise quotes on that. This is an estimate from Orbis. We feel like it's a very good but not exact proposal. This would require a transfer into the IT fund just because of the size of the project. We cannot do this in phases. It would be very hard. It would be much more expensive to do it in phases. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, I think this one too is to keep on the board's radar screen, but nothing that we want to tackle immediately. Again, we're still getting out of the COVID budgets and situations, but something to keep on our radar screen, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
I'm sorry, I got one more. I think I have one more. Yeah, one more. I apologize. Last one is body cameras. This is kind of an extensive one. I will not belabor the point, but it would be basically buying cameras and related software, subject to what we believe will be state law very shortly. We believe we found a very efficient product. Certainly, we would want to know more about any purchasing items that we could get through DuPage County. But the quote that we've gotten is for an essentially $80,000 a year for body cameras, fleet in-car mobile cameras, 25 taser devices, as well as installation and training. The way these things work is it's now basically a licensing deal where they will give you the taser, the camera and stuff, and then you rent it more or less. So after a certain period of time, it will come through and simply give you a new taser or a new camera, provided that they wear out. There are some grants currently available. We imagine there'll be grants coming online from the state at some point here. However, they're not available for public consumption right now. They just have to be released. Again, noting this is about an $80,000 a year cost to adopt body camera program in the village. Thanks.
Okay, and that, of course, we will comply with the law, but I can assure the board that all the mayors are looking at how we can reduce the costs of everything if we can act through the county and act. They think there's going to be some grants. I'll keep the board apprised on this, but this isn't a number that we want to tackle right now. We'll meet our obligations, but I think there'll be other funding mechanisms and other alternatives that you'll be able to consider.
Great. No further goals from the board. We're happy to answer any further questions as you like. Thanks.
Question, Evan, then in general.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the meeting, you said that we had a $50,000 surplus. That was before these projects, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the current year budget. FY 2021, these are goals for next year.
Right, got it. Okay, so you don't yet know what the surplus or you don't know how these impact surplus. Put a lot of ornaments on the Christmas tree. I'm not sure if we have all the money.
I can guarantee you do not have all the money to do all these things. What we're planning on doing is we did hear some things that you want us to look into very seriously, and we also heard some things that we will tackle at some point, but not necessarily today. That was what I was looking for to get some sort of rank ordering. What we will do is we will do our best, Amy and I, to work to get as many things funded next year as possible. However, we as staff, we certainly can be corrected if it's necessary. We felt that the waitlisting approach worked well. Allow you to kind of move and adjust as you needed to on a quarterly basis. As always, our expenditure and our revenue projections for the budget are conservative. We're trying not to reach to find money or pretend that we won't spend money. So there are some things in here that we certainly will not even bother getting into the budget, but there are some things in here that will likely reach on a wait list. So we will do our best to fund as many of your priorities as we can, but we will certainly keep you apprised of opportunities to come back at a later date if opportunities are present.
Thank you. And the last thing I have about the budget, it's not an exciting project, but legal bills and or legal settlements and stuff like that, those could pop up. Have we consideration for those in the budget?
We are doing our best to analyze the budget as the bills come in. I certainly cannot predict the future as to what may happen regarding any sort of item on that, though.
Okay.
With the laughter from my fellow trustee, Joe.
Trustee, Lisa, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So I didn't see the carriageway water main replacement project. I know it's a waitlisted project. It's a high priority waitlisted project, but I didn't see it in our discussion tonight.
This is related to the general fund. The carriageway project will come out of the water fund.
I understand that.
We're going to be having a discussion of the water fund in a few weeks. Okay. We are also going to be talking, Dave can comment on the water model study that's coming through, which will account for all of our projects over the next 10 years. Okay. So it is being developed at this time, and we certainly would want to have that funded and approved at the earliest convenience.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That was very thorough. Spent a lot of time on it, as we should. Okay, that takes us to item 9, public comments. Is there any public comment either in the boardroom or call-ins? If you've called in, you need to unmute yourself and then you'll have the floor. You'll be recognized, identify yourself, and you'll have the floor. Let's start with the call-ins. Anybody calling in? Anybody public comment want to unmute and be recognized?
Gary, one moment. I do see someone's name who called earlier asking to speak. Ms. Fox, are you on the line? Going once?
I think she has to hit *6. You might want to tell her that.
Ms. Fox or anybody else, if you want to speak, unmute. One of the ways is *6.
She may not be on the Zoom call at this time.
Okay, let's, maybe she'll still try or others will try. Anybody in the boardroom, any public comment, anybody in the
Yes.
boardroom?
This is Trustee Mittal. I just wanted to inform everyone that based.
No. Anita, I want to take public comment.
Oh,
Not-
okay, so,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I confused you. Is there anybody in the boardroom, any resident that wants to participate in public comment?
None on the board, Mayor.
Hey there, sorry about that.
Hello, Jennifer. How are you?
Ms.
I'm
Fox?
good. I was running on my treadmill.
Okay.
So I just was popping in to address the noise that the residents at the 450 building experienced the last several years, but last summer was definitely by far the worst. I don't know. I've been in on the meeting for about an hour and a half, but I didn't hear you mention it. And I'm assuming that you didn't, right?
No, nobody, that was not on the agenda, Ms. Fox. I know you and I spoke this week about the summer noise, especially the noise coming from the karaoke performer at, I believe it's the county wine merchant. I told you that I had spoken to Deputy Chief Loftus about your valid complaints and how we will be addressing them and making sure that the noise, and especially the karaoke, doesn't disturb you the way it did last summer.
Yeah, so I guess my only question would be, is there not a noise ordinance in place in Burr Ridge so that the police actually have recourse other than being called and going over and gently asking that the music or the noise be turned down? I'm aware I moved into a community that is a shared community with both retail and restaurant and residential. And so I do understand, like you and I discussed last week, if I wanted it to be a really sleepy, quiet town, I would have moved into a sleepy, quiet residential neighborhood. But, I feel like it's a fair expectation from the people that live across the street from that strip mall that noise be at a manageable level. So it's shared outdoor space. And then after 10 o'clock, it not be infringing on our peace and quiet as people who live here and perhaps, go to bed around that time. So it was every weekend, every Friday and Saturday, all summer. I probably called the police, I'm going to say 15, 20 times. The music was so loud throughout the evening until midnight, Friday and Saturday, that it would have been near impossible. Actually, I'll say impossible, because I had to get up and come in from my patio on more than one occasion because the music was so loud that I could not sit down and have a conversation on the telephone or with a neighbor. I took some videos of that, which I told Evan I would mail to him. And I have a petition of homeowners from this side of the building as well. Half of the people that live on this side of the building have signed it so far. There have been 3 people that voiced concern about putting their name on that because they wouldn't want it seen by these business owners in particular across the street that we're talking about. But the majority of the other people, the people that haven't signed, either are in Florida and don't live here, or I just haven't gotten a hold of them yet. But it's a problem. I mean, it's not that I don't like the music being played. It's that it is at a decibel that makes it impossible to play my own music, for instance. It really ruined last summer, which was stressful for everyone. And it made it impossible every single weekend. I cannot stress that enough. Every weekend, Friday and Saturday night, was drunk karaoke from County Wine Merchant. And I walked over with my dog myself, so I'm not exaggerating or dramatizing. It was drunk karaoke every weekend night, the same songs, drunk, slurred singing every night till midnight, Friday and Saturday for 3 months straight. It was brutally unbearable. So I just don't know what we can do about that so we can prevent that from being another summer of me having to call the police every weekend.
It's not going to get better with the new bars and restaurants and nightclubs we just approved there.
Jennifer, thank you for your public comment. I think you and I are on the same page. We spoke Okay, unless you have anything else, I'm going to see if there's someone else that wants to make a public comment. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. Let's stay in touch. Is there any other public comment? Okay, it doesn't appear to be any other public comment. Reports and communications from village officials. Any trustees have any reports or communications? Trustee
This is Trustee Mittal. I just wanted to share with everyone that I am working with Janet Koval and the staff to see what we can do to kick off the events in the Village Center, the Park District, County Line Square, and maybe involve the Chamber as well. We're going to make a joint effort to do what we can to bring back what we used to have in 2019. And last year, because of COVID, we had a big setback. So we're meeting individually with all the 4 parties to see what we can put on the calendar for the residents. So Burridge can remain a very special place and a very fun place. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other trustees?
This is Trustee Model. I just want to say thank you. This is the time of year, Dave Preissig, your team is out in force with all this fun snow activity. So thank you. I know the other trustees will probably join in as well. Thanking you and your team for their exemplary work. I always try to wave at the plows and give them a thumbs up. So hopefully they see me doing that and recognize it's a friendly gesture. I try to do the same for the police as well. So anyway, thank you to you and your team. For the police, I was curious for Chief Madden, this was interesting to just hear all this drunken karaoke and stuff going on there. And I don't know if you've done a DUI checkpoint or anything like that in a while, but there's a lot of activity going on at these. Now we have more bars and nightclubs. You might want to consider making sure that people are driving safe as they're coming out of these places here in the village. So I encourage you to do that. And then also, Evan, I saw some email traffic. I was curious, Gigi's got this place that he thinks he's opening, or I don't know what's going on with it. The sign's down now, I guess. I saw some email traffic that you were working with the village attorney in September to get a temporary permit approval. I know we gave some authority to staff to approve things. Did you improve? Did that get approved, or what's going on? Because the mayor told everybody the village had received nothing, but according to that FOIA, I saw there was must have received something.
So that's a fair question. Let me clarify. So when we were initially approached by several restaurants in the village, they had informed us that they wanted to have temporary spaces, subject to the board's discussion that we had, I think it was September, that these would be temporary spaces. Temporary as we define it through May 1st. One of the restaurants has a lease, Patty Sunrise Cafe has a lease that expires May 1st, and so thus staff approved it to have a temporary use. If Mr. Manderscheid wants to extend beyond May 1st, as I've told him, he needs to get a special use to do that or revise his existing special use. The issue at Are We Live was that we were under the impression that a similar lease situation had occurred where the gentleman had a lease extending through May 1st. It had been brought to my attention in discussing it with the owner that the lease was for several years. And so we said, cannot operate without a special use permit. And we denied him the opportunity to open up. We also asked him that he immediately remove the sign to remove any understanding that there may be a business operating there. I believe we actually spoke somewhat coincidentally on the same day, or at least I received the email from you saying what's going on with the sign. We had literally 3 hours before said we observed the sign. We do not feel that it advertises legitimate business because you have to have a legitimate business related to a sign being up. You have to have a bona fide business being open there, which was not approved yet. And so we as staff did not approve Are We Live for any temporary special use. The current status is that they had explored applying for a petition for that particular use. It has not gone forward at this time, and thus it cannot operate at this time. We're also under a stop work order, simply to make sure that we don't have any more work going on before building permits are approved. So staff is pretty thoroughly involved with the discussion. We're making sure that development is controlled and under the board's overall guise. I would also like to note, just to the record, that that provision, which allows us to have temporary approvals, automatically sunset on May 1st of this year. So if they were to come back to me on May 2nd, there is no such thing as me having that authority at that time. So
answering that, I appreciate it.
Trustee Snyder?
Go ahead, Trustee Snyder.
Mr. Walter, we've discussed legal bills have been discussed in the past. Would you know the cost of the FOIA requests and the threats of litigation against the village that trustee Model has brought to our attention?
So to date, we have about $41,000 in total legal bills paid to Serena, Romello, and Durkin related to these FOIA requests and other matters that we've had to litigate with trustee Model.
I have no threats of litigation. I'm not aware of any litigation. Yeah, I'd like to avoid the FOIA request too, Joe. You know, you guys set this up.
You've had your moment, Zach. Did that answer your question?
Asking a question. So the total that was spent so far for the FOIA requests, et cetera, was what?
$41,000.
So 41,000. Elm Street Culvert cost 50,000. Body cameras cost 57,000. 60,000 of linear feet to replace a pathway thing. But we're spending 41,000 on FOIA requests.
You're in control of this, Joe. You have set up. You all.
Thank you very much, Evan.
You and Mayor.
Order.
If you don't like how it's working, I suggest
very much,
you change
Evan.
it, because it's a tremendous waste of money.
Is there any other trustee that wants to?
Trustee Diapolo.
Go ahead.
I just had a couple of comments regarding the budget, and this is actually one of my favorite topics to talk about. I know it's boring, but I like getting into the details of the budget. But I just want to remind the other trustees about our police pension and the fact that our rating agency, Moody's, has noted our unfavorable high pension liability, and that can have an effect on our credit. So favorable bond rating is critical to our long-term financial growth, as noted in our packet. So I just want to keep that in the back of our minds as we're going through the budget, you know, and we've got access to some money. We want to maintain our strong credit rating, and we can do that by managing our police pension fund actively. And then the other point I had was regarding our reserves. You know, we have to remember that the reserves that Burridge has, that is taxpayer money. So we do have those reserves. And to my understanding, it's about 65% of our general fund. And you know, I'd like to get a study done on, you know, what are some of the other towns' reserves at, you know, how long our reserves have been that high, and you know, we should be using those taxpayer dollars for taxpayer services. So I just want to get a better sense of, you know, what a strong, responsible reserve would be for a village of this size.
We look forward to working on that.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to put something on the agenda for the next meeting, please. I'd like to put something on the agenda. No, Gary, that's what I was told with the procedure. I would like my fellow trustees to put on the agenda.
Somebody else.
Pull back the restrictions that you placed on me that are costing the village $40,000 and growing. I'd like to roll back the restrictions on my working with staff. I'd like to roll back any restrictions that you placed on me in my duties, that I don't have to FOIA the village to collect information, so that I can get it directly from staff.
If you came to the meetings, you wouldn't have to FOIA the requests. That's the problem.
Don't be so silly.
Okay, Zach,
I would like to put that on the agenda. It sounds like there's consensus from my fellow trustees to save this money, or do you want to keep wasting the money? Is that what the village board wants, to keep?
well, actually, Zach, we would consider putting that on the agenda, but those two things are unrelated. Your FOIA requests are you self-inflicting that on the village. Everything you've ever asked for, you have received. You have nonetheless decided.
You're allowed to do this, Mayor. You looked that up. I
did things unnecessarily.
I didn't get the legal bills until I FOIA. I didn't get the information.
We'll consider putting that on.
I'd like to put it on the agenda to save the money. My fellow trustee, he seems to
be. He asked an answer. He's got the information. He doesn't come to the board meetings. Check how many times he doesn't show up.
The taxpayers don't like this. Is an abuse of their money.
So you're spending it.
I
spent the 41,000.
I'm not in charge.
I'm not in charge. You are. You.
That's enough. That's enough. Is there any other comments by any other trustees?
I'd like to save the money.
All right.
Well, then stop making the request. Stop making the request.
So I shouldn't get information. You'd like less transparency. You'd like.
Come to the meetings.
Yeah.
Where were you last weekend?
I'm at the
Last week.
meeting.
You didn't come last week. You didn't even notify the village. Stop already.
Right, okay,
So,
let's move on, let's move on, stop the grand.
Holy, you want to threaten me and.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, point of order,
Thank
please.
you. Al or Guy, anybody else want
What's
to come?
the order that you were calling for?
Okay, any other comments? by-
Comments or questions, trustee Francis?
Yes, yes, sir.
So I was listening to what Evan was saying about these legal bills, but I didn't hear it all. Could you reiterate it, please? I was trying to take notes here.
Go ahead, Evan.
So we've totaled to date $41,000 of total SRD spending on top of an additional whatever staff time it takes to actually get all those things managed on our own end. There's an in-kind cost to dedicating that thing.
Do you have an idea what that staff cost is?
We're going to call it 350 staff hours at $55 an hour. It's about $19,000. That's for managing FOIAs on our end.
So, and I'm exploring with the attorneys of putting all the FOIA requests on the website.
No, how much
There's
is
more transparency.
step away from work?
Okay.
So I'd like to know the answer to that. How much have we spent on legal bills preventing Jerry Sapp from returning to work? And when, by the way, is Jerry Sapp going to return to work?
I was not finished with my questions.
Sounded like you were.
So are there any other costs involved with these FOIA requests for this pending or this threat of litigation?
So there are the staff costs.
Any other costs out there?
Litigation.
So there's the $41,000.
I would suggest you talk to your lawyers about letters they've sent, okay?
Can you summarize this in a memo so we can all see it?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Prevented being in a meeting
Okay.
very improperly, you might be worried, right? I would agree.
Okay, I have some comments for the public.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir, Al.
a question I have. All of the trustees know that trustee Zach Model has put in a tremendous amount of FOIA requests. The question I ask him, or I would like to ask him, out of all of this information that you wanted, that you received, have you found anything out of the ordinary that you were really looking for, or was just a total waste of our time and money?
Well, I found quite a few things out of the ordinary, Al. Thanks for asking. We can get into that, but I'd like to talk about that in the near future as soon as possible. But again, I wonder what it costs to get all of you the information that you get. You don't have to FOIA. You're able to go request.
No, you don't have to FOIA either, Zach.
I heard earlier today, Anita had a nice conversation with
So,
Joe. They
if
had
you
a budget
put
meeting.
something,
I get those kind of.
something on the agenda of all the stuff that you have FOIA'd, we will certainly consider putting it on the agenda.
I can FOIA everything all the time because it seems like Mayor Grosso.
Come to the meetings.
Doesn't seem like it.
Show up at the
No,
meetings.
you didn't get this.
Where were you
information.
last
didn't
meeting?
get
You didn't
any
even
of the
show
budget
up.
briefing with you in the meeting.
Phone call, no nothing,
No, I'm
Zach, as
talking right
usual.
now. So it doesn't matter, no call or no nothing. I would like to get information directly from Amy, directly from Evan, directly from the staff, directly.
You forfeited that right. You forfeited that right many times,
Ridiculous.
and you got sanctioned accordingly.
You've created this game. You've created.
No, you did.
For me
You
to
did,
be effective without FOIA. Exactly, Mayor. Roll back your way for ordinances.
You were the
Stop
one.
blocking me from participating in meetings.
You
When I
were the
call in,
one.
I'll be able to participate and not be blocked. When I ask for information, I should get it without having to send
You have to
a
come to the
dozen
meetings.
emails, Mayor.
You have to
and
go to the
threaten
meetings.
litigation and FOIA it.
Where were you last meeting?
I
No
don't-
phone call, no notice to the village, no
Okay.
nothing, as usual.
That has
No
nothing to do
notice,
with-
no
you
phone
try to
call,
block me
no
from having
Zoom,
meetings.
no
You
nothing.
love it.
You don't come to the meetings. You don't
Well, Joe, I'll tell you
show
what I
up at the
wasn't
meetings.
doing. You do
Show
your
up at the
activities.
meetings.
I'll tell you, I
Where
was
were you
making
last
my
meeting?
insurance premium
Where
for
were
that.
you last
How
meeting?
about you, Joe?
Where were you
You
last meeting?
notarized this in documents with your
Where were
brother's
you
stamp.
last
Is that what
meeting?
you were doing?
Man, you don't even come.
Okay.
You don't even notify
Joe,
anyone.
I know you like to fraudulently notify documents with your brother's stamp. I know that. I witnessed
You
it.
make up
I
so many
personally
stories.
witnessed
You
do it
make
on
up-
your election document.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
point of
that's
order,
enough.
please.
Point of order, you guys.
I don't
That's-
want to hear from you about anything.
That's enough.
But I would like you to stop wasting the people's money.
Thank you.
Roll back your ordinance so that I could participate.
Point of order, please.
Thank you.
You have
Thank
made this
Thank you.
problem yourself.
Thank
You
you.
all have done this. You are in control,
We'll
not
move
me.
on.
If you don't like what's going on,
We'll
change.
move on from the ranting. Okay, now I have a few things to say, and then we can get to our final items. In the past few weeks, the area has been blanketed with approximately 20 inches of snow. Our Public Works Department has operated shifts on 6 of the last 7 weekends. We want to thank, of course, our Public Works Department for clearing and salting our roads so we can all get around safely. Whenever it snows, please remember not to leave vehicles parked on our streets, and do not push snow from your driveway onto our roadway, or at least try to clear it a little bit from your driveway entrances. Next, the Burr Ridge Community Park Foundation is sponsoring a Taste of Burr Ridge on Saturday, March 13th at 6:30. The fundraiser for the Community Park Foundation is an interactive cooking class with the executive chef of Eddie Merlot's. You will be provided with everything you need to prepare a gourmet meal, along with access to a live Zoom cooking class. If you're interested, for more information or to purchase tickets, go to burridgeparkfoundation.org. That's burridgeparkfoundation.org. Next Monday, February 15, is President's Day. It was originally established to celebrate President George Washington's birthday, but in the 1970s, the federal holiday became popularly known as President's Day to celebrate all of our presidents, past and in the present and in the future. I have nothing more. Evan, we have some closed session items. I think you polled some of the board members. If we don't need to really do this tonight, we're well past my 2-hour general rule, and we're at 2.5 hours. I'd like to not do these items. But unless
I can only say that I can be very, very brief in the closed session, and I don't think it will take long.
Because we're going to have another closed session in the next meeting, right?
yes, we will.
So we might as well knock these things out tonight.
It will not take long to do this
We're
tonight.
all prepared for it. Might as well knock it out.
Okay, then I need a motion to go into closed session to discuss minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes under 5 ILCS 1202C21, also for collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees under 5 ILCS 122C2, and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body under 5 ILCS 122C1. Can I get a motion?
Mayor, this is Mike Durkin.
Yes, sir.
You have the option of either recessing into closed session, which would then require you to come back and reconvene in open session in order to adjourn, or you could adjourn into closed session, and that would alleviate the need to come back into open session simply to adjourn. So a recess means you come back. A motion to adjourn means you don't have to come back.
Okay, a motion to adjourn and to go into closed session for the items I read and I don't want to read again. Can I get that motion?
So move.
Second, Skiappa.
Okay, we got second. Mital made the motion, Skiappa second. Roll call, please.
Patel,
Yes.
Schiappa,
Yes.
Paveza,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Model,
No. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Francis,
Yes.
6-0 passes.
6-0. We are going into closed session and we're adjourning until February 22nd at 7 p.m.
Brad, can you make sure you get the village attorney, Mike Durkin, into the closed session? Thank
Yeah,
you.
so give me a minute here. I'm just locking it
Mayor,
up,
can I get a minute?
moving everybody in.
Yeah, whoever needs a minute, please take a minute.